Donald Trump's immigration speech made good sense sound like extremism. Sabotage, anyone? As David French nailed yesterday at nationalreview.com, the messenger is deliberately and calculatedly discrediting the message. Wednesday night, Donald Trump outlined the core of a sensible, responsible immigration policy and then promptly obscured that policy in an avalanche of over-the-top rhetoric, inane flourishes, and extravagant promises, which is to say, BS promises. He threw raw steaks at an audience hungry for red meat. Apparently, he can't get past the primary season. And in so doing, squandered a chance to persuade, which is the core mission of presidential leadership. Let's break this down into the basics. At its core, Trump's 10-point plan turns on a few simple and sound concepts. It is the responsibility of the American president to secure the liberty and prosperity of the American people. For the sake of national security, economic stability, and cultural cohesion, a nation must be able to control its borders and regulate who enters the country, and those who enter the country must be people who will contribute to the health and vitality of the national community. When it comes to enforcement, Trump's priorities are correct. Illegal aliens who have committed additional crimes since entering America should, in fact, be the first to be deported. Those individuals are already in the criminal justice system. Their immigration status is known, and they have demonstrated that they're a harmful, dangerous presence in the United States. Moreover, when speaking of the wave of refugees streaming from jihadist conflict zones in the Middle East, Trump rightly attacked the misconception that the humane response is to open our borders to migrants, despite knowing that our jihadist enemy is attempting to infiltrate their ranks. In the aftermath of the Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein seemed poised to slaughter the Kurds, the United States established functional safe zones that allowed our Kurdish allies to survive and even thrive in place. We can and should do the same for Middle Eastern refugees today. Unfortunately, Trump's immigration views, even if sensibly expressed, are outside the mainstream of American public opinion. Reality check, Trumplicans. Donald Trump has turned 2-to-1 American opposition to illegal immigration to 2-to-1 support for it. Single-handedly. That wasn't a problem in the Republican primary, where Trump appealed to a plurality that was apparently longing for a celebrity voice. I don't know why being a celebrity made it carry any more weight. Veracity would have made it carry more weight. What's that word the left loves so much? Gravitas. To confront the establishment on immigration and virtually everything else. Burn it down! That was the real priority of Trump supporters, not stopping Hillary Clinton. But it is a problem now, a big problem. Given that he's staked so much of his message on immigration, and that a majority of voters disagree with his immigration stances, it's imperative that Trump strove to persuade those voters that he's right. But everything about the tone and flourishes of his speech Wednesday night seemed calculated to repel. There's the bizarre wall fantasy, as if we're going to get for free, and Mexican President Nietos, the first words out of his mouth Wednesday morning was, "We're not paying for any damn wall." some combination of the Great Wall of China and the Maginot Line on our southern border. There's the bizarre safe zone fantasy, as if we're somehow going to have greater influence on the ground in Syria and Iraq by delegating responsibility for endangered refugees to alleged allies who've never demonstrated either the intention or the military capacity to make a decisive difference. We can't just supervise the safe zones, we have to create them. And that means a greater, long-lasting, more dangerous military commitment in the Middle East. Who's the globalist now, huh? The man takes a sound idea, for example, reinstituting the Cold War practice of ensuring that immigrants don't advocate or publish the economic, international, and governmental doctrines of the precise ideology we're fighting, and turns it into an ideological certification that exactly no one outside his circle of true believers trusts him to create, much less enforce fairly and legally. And he does it all with a tone that causes those, and the tone is the key here, that causes those who feel genuine and justifiable compassion for illegal aliens peacefully working and raising families in this country to recoil in his obvious disdain. In other words, Trump goes out of his way to discredit the idea that border hawkery is about the rule of law, about national sovereignty, about cultural cohesion, about national security, and about the Constitution. But rather, no, because Donald Trump is a liberal Democrat, he thinks conservatives oppose illegal immigration because they don't want a bunch of brown skins coming into their country. Trump thinks conservatives oppose illegal immigration on racial grounds. That's what he thinks we believe. Is it any wonder the alt-right considers Donald Trump to be their hero and their meal ticket? Trump does not communicate in the language of a leader making hard choices after balancing all the competing interests. That would require the ability to think, but rather in the language of a man who's punishing people he doesn't like. Now, there is a powerful and, yes, compassionate argument for an immigration policy that is built around border security and domestic law enforcement. And a president's greatest priority is his citizens. And when there is powerful evidence that current immigration policy is harming the economic well-being and security of American families, there is an obligation to act. In politics, however, method and message tend to merge. So a terrible messenger often discredits an otherwise worthy message, which is the raison d'etre of the Trump candidacy. Donald Trump is in this race to discredit conservatism, discredit the right, and discredit and destroy the Republican Party on behalf of La Clintonostra, Hillary Clinton. Trump is in this race and always was to get Hillary Clinton elected, Trumplicans. Open your eyes, it's right in front of you. On immigration, this is precisely what we see today. If present trends continue and when present trends continue and Trump loses a winnable race in large part because he's engaged in behavior that he should, maybe he does know, and that's why he's engaging in it, repels the majority of the electorate, then the practical result will not be just the dreadful immigration policies of Hillary Clinton, but also grave damage to the conservative case for immigration policies that protect and maintain American liberty, security, and prosperity, which we haven't had since 2008, but I digress again. That is, in fact, Trump's likely immigration legacy. thanks to his own deliberate sabotage, he's blazing the trail for open borders, amnesty, and a path to citizenship, which just a week ago he claimed and declared his wholehearted support, as he always has. If anybody would bother to vet the man's background, Trump built this movement, and he's the biggest reason it will not achieve its most cherished aims. Once again, Trumplicans, you're all suckers. Leon Wolf at Red State this morning tacks on a very appropriate postscript. After spending the better part of a week giving his oldest and best supporters the vapors over his incoherent immigration message, Trump is rumored to have put all those doubts to rest with his much ballyhooed immigration policy speech, which was really more of a rally speech. It has led immigration opponents to say all sorts of absurd things. Things like Donald Trump is now a policy wonk. Oh, Lord. I hate personality cults. The general assumption, I guess, is that Trump did himself a lot of favors by returning to his hardline immigration roots, which he actually has not done. In fact, just this morning, he's reverted to, well, I'm softening my immigration position. So and this gets this is the point that Leon Hunt is making. I wonder if people who step outside the bubble where the quasi-think tanks that rail against immigration live realize how out of step their position, and by extension the position Trump arrived at Wednesday night, but then he's already flipped back again, is with the general American population. Again, reality check, Trumplicans. This is what Donald Trump has done to your immigration position. Remember when Americans, in fact, in the 2014 midterms, remember the election exit polling indicated that Americans opposed illegal immigration by a 2-to-1 margin? Remember that? Well, that was then. This is now after 15 months of Donald Trump. By an overwhelming 66% to 32% margin, or 2-to-1, Americans oppose a policy of deporting all illegal aliens back to their home countries. Even non-Hispanic whites oppose such a program, 62% to 36%. This was per Gallup. The American public likewise opposes building a wall along the border of Mexico by a 65% to 33% margin. And here's the most damaging thing of all. Well over 80%. Remember I just got there saying just not even 2 years ago, the American public was overpoweringly for border control, border hawkery, controlling the border, enforcing the immigration laws, getting rid of illegal aliens, etc. It's now completely flipped thanks to Donald Trump. 80% of Americans support what Trump's supporters, Trump never supported it, what Trump's supporters derisively refer to as amnesty. Donald Trump has discredited border hawkery, just like he's discredited every other aspect of conservatism and the Republican Party. And you Trumplicans wonder why I am so contemptuous of you? Look what you've done to us! The thing is, these positions are also majority positions among Republican voters as well. Now, Even within the insular world of Republican primary voters, there are likely no more than an even polling proposition, 50-50. Recall that Trump had collected a mere 37% of the Republican primary vote on the day Ted Cruz dropped out of the race. Objectively speaking, if you've made Ann Coulter and Roy Beck happy with your immigration rhetoric, you've probably pissed off most of America. Even if you set that aside, though, even if Trump were now helping himself for the general election with his immigration policy, which quite clearly he's not, because nobody can figure out what the bleep it is, he certainly wouldn't have done himself any favors with his behavior over the last week. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that the American voting public makes their decisions based on a detailed analysis of the candidates' positions on the issues. Those days are decades in the past. The American people vote much more on impressions of the candidates that they gather, often from hazy and imperfect information about what the candidates have said and done. And the one area where Trump is getting killed right now, and the single area he is losing decisively, is the ethereal quality of having the right temperament to be president. Hillary Clinton that's what's going to put Hillary Clinton in the White House, folks. And that's not to say that Hillary Clinton does have such a temperament. But again, it's like that joke about the two natives who were running away from a killer leopard, and one of them stops to put on a pair of running shoes, and the other one asks him, "What are you doing? You can't outrun the leopard." And first guy with the shoes says, "I don't have to outrun the leopard. All I have to do is outrun you." Hillary Clinton doesn't have the right temperament to be president either, but she's a lot closer to that pin than Donald Trump is, and that's what most of Americans are saying with these survey results. The American people are not above forgiving a candidate for showing some ideological flexibility on an issue or two here or there, but the whiplash Trump has given the whole country on his core signature issue, and continues to give the country, even as we speak, only to come back to settle exactly where he was to begin this campaign. Well, that was last night, not today. Today he's flipped back again, which was itself a flip-flop, will do little to reassure people that they will ever be able to predict what Trump will do next. And you know what causes recessions, ladies? There's a lot of factors go into it, but part of it is when businesses are uncertain of the economic landscape. They're uncertain of what's coming. So what happens in that situation? They pull back their resources. They don't invest. They don't expand. They batten down the hatches and wait for the current conditions to blow over and more favorable conditions to return. Uncertainty, in other words. Uncertainty. People don't want uncertainty in the Oval Office. Most Americans do not want volatility from the person in charge of the nuclear command codes. People want predictability. I mean, generally, that's the kind of what Americans want from their president. At times of great stress for the country, they want a man or woman of greatness. But mostly, and I don't know if I can actually agree with Leon Hunt here. He says, mostly they want someone who is boring. That doesn't seem to match with today's reality TV decayed culture. Someone who they don't have to constantly worry about as they go about living their lives. Of course, if that were true, why did they elect and re-elect Barack Obama? What explains Trump mania? Well, maybe this does. Kind of the opposite of what they apparently want from candidates. Never mind the fact that some candidates, one of the candidates is going to become the office holder. See what I mean about how screwed up, how decayed, how just destroyed our culture is? It's the third deliverance from Romans chapter 1, verses 21 to 32. A mind that cannot think straight. And if you wanted an example of a political cycle, a presidential election cycle, where thinking straight has been in such short supply, it's 2016. Say what you want about Trump, but he makes it interesting. The question is whether it's the kind of interesting Americans want in their president. And according to the polling that we continue to see, the answer to that question appears to be no.